Okay, now we can start the meditation session before the talk. Okay. Just choose a comfortable posture, as comfortable as you could. And you begin the meditation by bringing your attention, your awareness into your body. Just be aware of your body, feelings, sensation. And just try to relax your body. Is there any tightness or tension in any parts of your body? And you just relax. Try to relax your body as much as you could. Just relax. By relaxing your body, it helps you to calm your body and also your mind. As your body becomes relaxed, and you can feel there's a calmness in your body and mind. As you feel that your mind started to settle, and you can start to bring your attention onto your breath. Just simply pay attention on your breath. Whenever your mind wanders off, just bring your attention back to the breath again. Just patiently, gently bring attention back to the breath. And just don't have to rush and force yourself to focus on the breath. It just allowed this moment to be. Knowing that your mind wanders off, and just bring your mind back to the breath again. And just do it very gently. So we're going to end the meditation by counting 3 in and out breath. And you can end the meditation.